us, what do you call your rice bowl?
Yukihira-style Chaliapin steak rice bowl.
What's cooking, YouTube? Welcome back to Food War February. In today's episode, we're going to be making Chaliapin steak. So let's get cooking. So for Chaliapin steak, the ingredients are quite simple. What you need first is a cut of meat. So what I have here is top sirloin steak, cheap and affordable, very easy to cook, and can be very, very tender. Next, what you'll need, of course, for a Chaliapin steak, you'll need an onion. So I have a yellow onion right here. We're gonna have mirin, soy sauce, red wine. This red wine is a Cabernet Sauvignon for cooking. I got plum sauce for the rice. This is actually, you can get this at the Asian market. Very cheap and very flavorful. Cornstarch, 1 cup of rice. So I have short grain rice right here. And lastly, green onion for garnish. First thing we're gonna do is pound out the sirloin so it's nice and even and relatively thin. Now you don't have to use sirloin if you don't like beef. Another alternative is chicken, otherwise you can use pork as well. For vegetarians, you can just use mushrooms and it'll also be very, very flavorful. So we have the steak down. I have saran wrap on the bottom, steak there. Now we're gonna put another piece of saran wrap on top so it'll be easier to clean up. Then we're gonna take our meat mallet and start to pound it out. The steak is now evenly thick throughout the whole entire steak. So what we're going to do next is going to create a pattern, checkered pattern, by scoring it with a knife on both sides. This is going to allow the onions to get right into the steak so it starts to tenderize the steak. Now when you're going to score, you're not going to go all the way through. You're just going to make a little score right on top of the surface so that it's not going to be all the way in the middle of the steak. The steak is now scored. Now it's time to chop up a ton of onions, finely minced. Let's start finely mincing this onion. So we just got done finishing up all the onions. They're nicely minced. So now what we're going to do, take the onions, put it on top of the sirloin and the bottom of the sirloin, so it's going to start to marinate. Make sure we press the onions nice and firm into the steak. Now that the onions are fully coated on the top and the bottom of the steak, we're going to let this marinate for 30 minutes. While we wait for the steak to marinate, it's time to start on our green onion garnish to finish up our last part of prep. Now that the steak's been marinating for 30 minutes with the onions on the top and the bottom, we're going to go ahead and remove the onions off the steak and we're going to start frying those up until they're nice and caramelized. So make sure we can get all the onions off the steak as best we can. Alright, now it's time to start cooking these onions and then start with the steak. Okay, so we're going to first start by heating up the pan. Once the pan is heated up, I have it at medium heat at the moment. We're going to fry these up until they're translucent. Then we're going to turn down the heat and start to caramelize those onions. And once the sugars come out of the onions, they're going to start to caramelize, they're going to start to turn brown, and that's going to provide a really nice flavor on top of a beautiful color. Pan is nice and heated now, so we're going to add some grapeseed oil to the pan. Now it's time to add all those onions. Let's go ahead and add just a touch of salt. So I just got done cooking the onions for about 2 minutes. They're nice and translucent. So what I'm going to do is turn down the heat to low and slow. Once the heat is on low, I'm going to keep consistently stirring the onions until they're nice and brown and caramelized. The onions are cooking. They're going to take about 10 to 15 minutes for them to actually be fully caramelized. Let's go ahead and start our rice. So the ratio for short grain rice is 2 to 1. So 2 parts liquid, 1 part rice. So we have 1 cup of rice, 2 cups of water. We're going to turn on the heat. We're going to add some salt. We're going to bring this rice up to the boil. Once it's up to the boil, then we're going to turn it down and let it simmer for 15 minutes until done. Okay, you can see the rice is up to a boil, so now we're going to turn it down to a simmer and just let that cook for 15 minutes. Alright, we got the rice working. We have the onions caramelizing. Next step is to go ahead and start searing this steak off. So we have our steak. We're going to go ahead and season it with salt on both sides. We got our pepper. Make sure our pan is nicely preheated, so I have it at medium to high heat. We're going to go ahead and add our grapeseed oil. The pan is just about ready to smoke. Let's go ahead and add our sirloin. Based on how thick this steak is, we're going to be cooking it on both sides for about 5 minutes each. Okay, steak is almost perfectly cooked. We're looking for medium rare here. So it's been cooked on 5 minutes on each side. We're going to pull it out of the pan, let it rest. If you're unsure about medium rare, take a thermometer. If it's at 115 to 120, that's going to be perfect. It'll rest and carry over to a perfect medium rare of 125 degrees Fahrenheit. Steak is resting. We have some beautiful sear in this pan. We don't want to waste that, so what we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead, take that 1 cup of red wine and deglaze the pan. Make sure to take your spatula, remove all the bits from the bottom. You want that flavor in there. Now that the pan is deglazed, you can see that I caramelized the onions. They're nicely brown, flavorful. So we're going to add that into our deglazed pan. Now that the onions are in the pan, we're going to reduce the rest of the red wine all the way till it's completely dry. The red wine is almost absorbed completely into the onions. We're going to finish it with some soy sauce and mirin. So we have our soy sauce. Our mirin. Now we're just going to stir. Alright, we have our mirin and soy sauce in here. Last thing we're going to do is finish it with a cornstarch slurry. So I have this cornstarch. I mixed it with cold water. Gotta mix it with cold water, otherwise hot water is going to prevent a lot of clumps. You're going to have like clay when it comes to cornstarch. It's going to react very, very tough. So I'm going to add just a little bit to thicken up the sauce. Alright, onions and sauce is done. Let's go ahead and check on our rice. Rice is done. Now we can go ahead and finish it with that beautiful plum sauce. Take a fork, just to kind of mix it up. Rice mixture's done. Time for plating. And there you have it, YouTube. Chaliapin steak from SHOKUGEKI no SOMA, Season 1, Episode 7. Let's go ahead and give this a try. This is awesome. The onions with the steak made it super tender. The flavors are just outstanding. Onions are caramelized with that soy-infused mirin as well. Really, really good. And on top of that, when it comes to the rice with that plum sauce, it really helps bring out that sweetness to lift it up so it's not too heavy on the stomach, but it's going to want you eating more. I would say overall, for the first time making this dish is outstanding. Turned out really, really well. I highly recommend you guys try this. YouTube, after making this dish, I just have one question for you. Please leave the comments below. Does this make me the next Don of Bowl Club? If you want to see more videos like this, please go ahead and click that like button, subscribe, and turn on that bell notification so you don't miss any more episodes coming up in the near future. I'm Chef Salty, and I'll catch you guys later.